All right, Henrik, welcome
Thank you very
to
much.
Mother Love.
Thank you.
Moederliefde, the podcast. I wanted to talk to you today about Pregnancy Dialogues, which you founded. And I'd love to hear more about who you are and your vision on it. But I'd like to start with what you wrote on your website about yourself, because I think it's so it says so much about who you are. So Henrik, have learned that even while one's baby is inside its mother's womb, she or he has a deep need to be valued as a person, to be included, spoken to, and sung to, and appreciated for one's expressions of life, no matter how young they may be. Personal observations and many research studies have made clear how incredibly important extended physical contact between parent and infant is, with effects on the child's future on so many psychological and biological levels: brain development, stress regulation, attachment, social and cognitive skills, and even lifelong physical health. I have begun to understand how intensely and intelligently a baby explores its surroundings right from birth, and how caregivers can support this development. It was during my work on a scientific article on baby wearing and motor development that it dawned on me that there was an urgent need for a new baby carrier design that supports the infant's motor development. This is about the baby carrier that you have designed, which we have also had a conversation about. But now I want to talk to you about Pregnancy Dialogues, which you have founded. And let's just start at the beginning. Can you tell me who you are and what your work is about?
Sure. I hold a PhD in organic agriculture originally, and when I was studying my PhD, there were so many different directions of what is actually organic agriculture. There's the Rudolf Steiner approach, the Waldorf sort of school, which also has an agronomic branch, and many different ways. And one of them was a Japanese researcher called Watanabe Fukuoka. And he had written a book called The Natural Way of Farming, and it was he also called it Do Nothing Farming. And the idea was that if you read nature closely enough, things become effortless. So later in my life, I had the incredible fortune of becoming the chief science officer of a global baby wearing company. And through that, I was able to attend all the major one set of conferences we'll call World Association of Infant Mental Health. And they also have regional branches, so the German Association of Infant Mental Health, and so on. And I also obviously learned a lot about physical contact, how important that is. And probably Pregnancy Dialogues obviously has to do with pregnancy, and that's has little to do with baby wearing as such. But the two links between that came out of my, as in much research, came out of anecdotal evidence or casual observations of me going to a midwife clinic in Copenhagen that I had a very strong tie with, and giving lectures to expectant mothers about the virtues of baby wearing and how to do it. And then seeing them over time, seeing that a significant amount of these mothers would simply just not do it. Even though I thought the case was pretty clear. And that sort of was my first sort of slight wonder or puzzlement. I mean, maybe it's too late to come and speak about baby wearing to mothers after the baby's there, knowing well that the figures, about 45% of the mothers have an insecure attachment. One Danish study puts the figure even higher. And we know that relates to the mother's willingness to engage in physical contact. So I began to think, maybe it's not quite enough to just speak about baby wearing. And then at a German regional conference, there was a psychiatrist who described what he called prenatal bonding. His name is Gerhard Schroth, and he's definitely one of the lights of the Association for Prenatal and perinatal psychology and health.
Yeah.
On the website, I think it's called birthpsychology.com. Is that correct?
Birth psychology.
Right. So this gentleman was the first to really describe to me how important it is to form a link to the unborn child.
Yeah.
And I immediately went and bought the book that he was inspired by. He was inspired by two Hungarian psychiatrists, The Umbilical Cord of the Soul, Nabelschnur der Seele. So in German I sat and tried to get the most out of it. Anyways, it was fascinating, and the idea of creating a sort of a spiritual or mental bond to the child, I could see that could probably do something.
Yeah.
But no criticism, but I could sense, okay. And then at the same time, I was also affiliated with the Copenhagen Cathedral as a member of the board of directors of the Copenhagen Cathedral, and I had also tried with midwives across the globe, with the presidents of the various midwifery organizations in most Nordic Western countries.
Yeah.
Because of my work, I had access to them, and they simply didn't swallow the hook. They didn't. I said, you can really reshape your role in society if part of your job also becomes supporting attachment.
Yeah.
And you would be the obvious professional group to do it, but there was no scientific or clinical interest in that amongst midwives at the time. So that's why I in desperation, I had a conversation with the dean of the cathedral during a lunch, and I said, I'm getting nowhere with the midwives. Maybe the church actually in the past had picked up on aspects of society where there were obvious holes.
Yeah.
They were some of the first to take children off of the street and get them in children's asylums and give them a bit more structure, and so on. So, and long and short, one female priest who had some rather uncomfortable postpartum experiences herself said, if I can make a difference to other mothers, I'm happy. And we then collaboratively started to create what eventually became the Pregnancy Dialogue.
Yeah.
And I have deviated, what we've done, we've deviated from this very strong stress on creating a spiritual bond to the child, because it may not always materialize.
Yeah.
And
it can actually make mothers insecure then if it doesn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we felt we would be putting the bar too high and setting the mothers up for a loss, which is the last thing we want.
Yeah.
So through this back and forth with Helene, my co-collaborator certainly, who's run the program now for, I don't know how many years now, many, 10 years? 10 years. 10 years it is, yes.
Oh, wow.
We settled on now what became the Pregnancy Dialogues. Yeah. Mm.
So can you say in short what Pregnancy Dialogues is?
Well, what we ask is that a group of women, normally much more than 4 to 5 to 6, because they all have to have speaking time, they sit together for 6 sessions before birth and 1 session after birth, and we have a manual, and it has questions that are asked. So it is about the reflections of the mothers during the pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And it's actually based on Italian research by a brilliant Massimo Amenetti, who did research on what are the themes that are circulating in a pregnant woman's mind. Yeah. So, and theoretically, the question should then really should activate these thoughts also, and it seems they really do.
So what came out of that research? What were the topics?
Well, the topics, now off the top of my head, we certainly start out with the pregnancy itself and how has that been received, because believe it or not, some parents are not met with much enthusiasm when they say they're pregnant for various reasons. Also, many parents will have mothers will have had previous miscarriages, as it's called, which weighs much heavier than we normally understand in society, and they have nowhere to go with that grief. And it can really impact their capacity to engage with the next child. So that's one of the themes, and then we also touch upon the mother's own experience as a child, which also includes her relation to her mother and her father.
Yeah.
And then the experience as a family, how was that? And what are the dreams and hopes the mothers will have about their future families? And we also discuss the ideas about the birth. These are sort of the major topics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the formation of the life with the new baby.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Also after the birth, what are the thoughts that we have? Yeah. That the mothers have. Yeah. So I mean, in this case, the facilitator has absolutely no opinion by him or herself as such.
Yeah.
So it's purely really what's going on in the mothers.
Yeah. So it's just an invitation for mothers to talk.
To reflect.
And then that's facilitated.
Yeah, and to share. Yeah. And we also have some relatively simple rituals, lighting a candle for the unborn child, and you actually, I think you should weigh in on your little very important improvement of our protocol. What was that you did?
Seeing I am a facilitator myself, as you know, and I've really just been, I think, somewhat surprised, maybe even just how much when you create a setting for women to talk about the topics that come up in pregnancy, how much that does for everybody. Like before I started, it just came up, this idea, the ritual is always, the welcoming the mothers, welcoming the babies, lighting a candle, and having some time to arrive and to relax with the meditation or some breathing exercise or visualization. And it just came to me to light a candle for miscarriages as well, because that's such a big topic that there's really no space for in our society.
Right.
And it's so much bigger in a person's life than the attention that we give to it.
That's for sure.
And I just thought to actually create. So I asked women who've had miscarriages, would you like to light a candle? Just to create that feeling of this is all included. It's included in this group. We include this experience that you've had. And and
there was a person in you, and that person still lives with you, and that should be.
It's still a part. It's a part of your story, and it doesn't have to go away. Even when you have, because a lot of women didn't even really feel the space to grieve, to really actually feel all there is to feel about a miscarriage, which is very important. And then it's actually only by experiencing all those feelings that you can then sort of move on, but still have that experience. It's always a part of you. And I've seen that with women too, when the space is created to grieve about it, that they've actually become thankful for the experience, that this is a part of me. This part of me doesn't have to be pushed away or has to be made smaller than it is. And they become thankful that that experience, that they've had that experience, that person that was with them, that little baby, wanted to be there. It's a totally different, in something so small, and that's what I realized over and over again. It's not big. It's actually really small things, like lighting a candle, like creating the space for women to talk about what's on their hearts. But there has to be a space for that. It has to be facilitated by someone who welcomes all there is. Which I think Pregnancy Dialogues does that very well.
It's not really trying to fix anything. It's not it's not fixing something that went wrong or this and that. It's being there and it's acknowledging.
And I think the reflection part of reflecting on where you came from, but not in a very heavy way. Just the way you want to talk or think about that to the depth you are comfortable with in a group.
Yeah.
It's an invitation.
Absolutely.
And
sometimes you maybe share less than what you think, but just having the question, having a week or two to consider it is Yeah, because that's part of the program also, is that at the end of each session you are asked a few questions to consider for the next time. And then also an element which people may do even regardless of pregnancy dialogues, but suggesting that you do some rituals with the child also.
Yeah.
Be it singing some preferred regular songs to the child.
Yeah.
As I also became a father, and we did sort of the pregnancy dialogues with one another, which is we couldn't find a group in our area, so we did it that way. But then the singing of these regular hymns, it actually made us so extremely calm every night.
Yeah.
And
So singing, talking to the baby,
treating that's
reading.
If there's anything that Appa has done right, it's the idea of considering the fetus as a person.
Yeah, as a person.
And therefore you would communicate. That's what you do with persons. So you would communicate and tell what's going on, for better and for worse.
Yeah. I think that's also what I love so much about what you write about yourself, or what you write about what you found, is that I think this sentence of the baby has a deep need to be valued as a person. I think we come from this paradigm where a baby is just, it's nothing, it's sort of not there until it's born, and then all of a sudden it is there. When now we've come to understand, like, it's a person from the very, very beginning, and it needs to be valued, it needs to be communicated with. And that's, I think, what I've also just seen in facilitating these groups, that because I love how pregnancy dialogues, it's a thread that goes through it, is this communicating with the baby and being invited to communicate with the baby, which I also do through visualization exercises. But what women say is that I realize now there's actually a person inside of me.
There is, and some of the more fancy psychological research, they look at some of the preterm children that are born and put them through some of the testing paradigms they had for, should we say, the factness of that the children respond contingently, because it's a big discussion. An adult does something, let's say we're in a psychological lab, an adult does something with the child makes some kind of response. Is that just some kind of reflex response, and one of the amazing experiences was when they had a mother and a baby in two different rooms, and then they communicated via video screens and the audio, and they recorded these interactions, and there was a beautiful conversation going on, and then they played back the tape of the mother's responses to the child, and the child was completely turned off by it because it was not contingent. The child detected that we're not having a real conversation. My mother's completely off key and off cue. And that's where, like, whoa, okay, they're not just a bunch of reflex. Mother goes, well, and then it has to say, blah, 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 no. And they've taken some of these paradigms also to the preterm children, and
so they see actually that inside of when a child normally is...
Should have been inside the womb, and then it's now outside, and then you'd apply these testing paradigms, you can see, whoa, there is...
This is how conscious they are.
There is a person in there. It's not just sort of spiritual type of thing, it's really measured in.
I think the research in that way is helpful for us to understand what I think we have intuitively as human beings have always known, but we've sort of moved away from that and become uncomfortable with like, oh, there's actually a person here. But if you look at it from the perspective of that you have a biochemical, like every thought, every emotion has a biochemical reaction inside your body, and then that actually goes through the placenta, so the baby feels everything. but what I like about pregnancy dialogues is that it's a very it's simplified. It's very easy to apply, and I think the sharing of bringing women together. Like, what were your thoughts on that? Because it is pregnancy dialogues is mainly women coming together.
We have had. I have co-facilitated a group of fathers also with Helene, who had a lot of experience with mothers, and she was actually very impressed with the fathers.
Yeah.
Saying they're very open and extremely reflected, and also they also feel the pain of the miscarriage to a lesser degree than the women, but they know that this is they sense this is really a big part of the women. So many fathers are a lot better than their reputation, to be fair. But the idea of a group, actually, I mean, because Gerhard Schroth, my original inspiration, was doing one-on-one, and that was also my original thought. But Helene was actually my co-facilitator or co-developer, was it has to be groups. And she was very right about that, because what we've experienced is that it creates quite strong bonds amongst the participants, even though they come from quite different backgrounds. But And actually, one of the things that in Denmark is that after birth you are assigned to mothers groups, and I don't know if the same in the Netherlands. But the health visitor will assign you to mothers groups, and my wife has become a part of two because of a little misunderstanding. Then she's part of two, but she's still seeing them now, a year and a half later, and that time to have to go through to be at the same stage of life. Because you may have very good friends, but because there's such a different stage of life, you can't really open these topics that are so much at your heart. So there's something built into the timing that creates a social network that you will then also be able to draw on in the future.
Yeah.
So
it's really community building.
Yeah, it is.
Because I think that's also a big part of what we lost.
Yeah.
Is going through this transformational process with other women as pregnant women.
Yeah.
So it's not only hearing, being able to share how you feel about certain things in your pregnancy, but also hearing how other women feel about that, or how they're processing that, or maybe what have shaped them in their childhood, how they're dealing with that now. So it creates this, I'm not alone in this. We can do this together.
Yeah.
And I think that's missing. It's
yes.
In our society.
That's a common complaint or reason for why people join this. Is I go to the medical facilities, and it's all biology, but I'm going through so much in my head. Is a complete reconfiguration of who I am.
Yeah. And that's the emotional part. It's ignored of us as human beings in our society. The emotional, and especially when as a woman you become pregnant, so much is activated inside of you. Also, just physically, but also your experience of how you have been mothered is activated when you become pregnant and give birth and start mothering. And I think there's not a lot is known about that.
Nope.
So I see that so much that women are sometimes shocked about what is happening to me. But I don't know myself like this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like those are words that I've heard so many women say. Yeah. And then it breaks my heart that there's no such a big part of us as human beings, like our emotional experience, is just ignored.
It's not important.
It's
not valued. It's not important.
As long as you're alive, you're doing well physically, then we're done. It's okay. So I think pregnancy dialogues is it's filling a gap.
It really is. It is.
So what did you see were the effects on women in your experience who joined the Pregnancy Dialogues group?
Well, I mean, as we all know, if you are stressed, you cannot communicate. I mean, in a relationship, when you're stressed, the quality of your interactions with your partner are impaired or compromised. And the same, if you are going through so many changes, you are maybe overworked and this and that, you simply have no energy or time, and you can't connect to the child in your womb, which is really, really so keen to be seen and appreciated and talked to. And that's what sounds strange to people, but there is a person there, and when there's a person, they want to be communicated with. And if there's too much stress, then it just doesn't happen. And it's not just, these women should pull themselves and just do a bit of wellness. I mean, some of the women we've had in the group had these miscarriages, and they were really creating so much anxiety in them for the next pregnancy.
It's very hard for them to connect.
They simply and there I shouldn't oversell pregnancy dialogues, but we've seen simply miracles, a bit what you described, simple rituals which takes the stress out of it, and it's like magic.
Well, I think if we go back to then what you said in the beginning, if we watch nature close enough, it becomes effortless. And this is actually our nature. We were made to do life together.
And to be open, but So
it's lowering stress.
That's the first. I mean, the calmness that comes there, and with the calmness then comes the ability to connect. And if you don't have the calmness, then you can forget about it.
That's also what I saw in the groups I've facilitated, is that actually the women coming into the space that I'd created was a trigger in a positive way to relax.
To ground, yeah.
And then we actually go back to what's nature inside of us, that we want to connect to our babies, to each other. So we don't have to be taught how to do that. It's actually be brought back to who we are.
And every mother is unique, and they may have their own ideas. So why on earth should we spend a second on telling them how they should think? It's almost respectless. So here we have give the mothers a chance to verbalize what do they want to do with their child, how do they want to be with it, and what are the things that happen in their own childhood that perhaps they would like to do differently. Which means they may have to take choices and this and that, but it's not for us to tell them what choices they should have. It's them. So
And space to even think about what is my vision about our family. What kind of family do I want to be? What kind of mother do I want to be? What kind of experience do I want my child to have? We don't necessarily think about these things often.
No, you maybe be on kind of autopilot, and they think, well, whatever my parents did, I'll do the same. But once you start reflecting, do I really want that necessarily? And maybe not. Or maybe you do. And if you do, then you do it on a happy basis. But
So if you would, what is your grand vision for pregnancy dialogues?
More laughter. No, but I think maybe I said that a little bit flippantly, but it's children that are seen and heard. I find them to be very positive and very full of life lust, and there's to see a child later on, when the child is eventually born, to see it unfold an appetite for life and to feel and to be charming and to be fun. There's no greater satisfaction, and that's we frankly also have to speak about the negative side, is that there's a fair amount of depressed mothers. And unfortunately that it tends to sit in the children. So, because they're simply met with flat emotions, because the mother doesn't have the energy to engage in. So to the degree we can take the stress out of the pregnancy and get a connection, and then we spoke about developmental cascades in our other talk, but yes, some of the psychology, you can't fall in love with a dish rag. If there's just a child that is also very flat emotionally, it becomes hard to then get the whole engine running, so to speak.
So could you say, to close off, something about that cascade, that developmental cascade? So what influence has does pregnancy dialogues, or can pregnancy dialogues, being a part of a group like this, have on the baby and mothers and attachment?
Well, I think for the child to have been respected from the very beginning while inside the womb, and to have felt seen, it gives a fundamental sense of confidence that the child has a place in the world, and that there's love in the world for the child. And with that fundamental, biologically embedded knowledge, the child meets the world with such a confidence and trust that there's love. That it emanates that to other people. And through that we have I would say a world which is what it could be, with trusting relationships and fun and what should we say? I hate the words innovation, but so much creativity could happen that can shape our world in different ways.
There's so much potential that's not used because, or it's not expressed because there's just not enough safe attachment, I think.
So So it's more so much about this word authenticity, but it's children that feel loved and known and contained and belonging, and that just gives such a basis for our life.
Yeah, and that's the children, right? But the mothers, there's also this big aspect of the mothers.
Yes, of course.
Who feel seen and part of something bigger than just themselves or their families. They feel heard and understood.
Yeah, and that's what exactly, if we come back to this whole discussion about attachment, that's exactly what didn't happen for about half of the pregnant population. Yeah. They did not feel seen and heard and respected and loved. And finally, here's a group where you do, where you are respected, you do have a voice, and it's. If you dive into the stories of insecurely attached people, this feeling of not being seen, not being respected, not being heard, it runs so deep, and it's so painful, and it so affects self-worth in ways that are unimaginable.
Oh yeah.
So
And then that's passed on.
Yeah,
Generation to generation, if it's not resolved.
It is, and it's just a waste of life.
Yeah.
It could be so much better.
Yeah.
And just because we didn't prioritize taking that time out for these things, and because it's, and I have to say, it's there's still so little general societal understanding of this need. Still, unfortunately.
It's amazing because it's actually. Again,
it's
very simple.
It's a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And we are, I don't know how it is in the Netherlands, but in Denmark, one of the biggest liabilities to the government budgets has to do with children that are not doing well. We call it the special pedagogy budget, and it's exploding.
So much can be avoided altogether.
I would say, and we are in 2024, and we still haven't cracked that number.
Yeah, no, we have such a big development to make in that area. Yeah. Because we have the knowledge. That's not. Yeah. There's so much research on it. It's just implementing it in daily life. Yeah. And I think pregnancy dialogues is a.
It's definitely one way to go about it. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, and we deliberately made it relatively short because other research shows that you can also overdo things. Yeah. So 6 times 2 hours should be a manageable investment for most people. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Sure.
Is there something you feel like we haven't covered?
No, I think we've been pretty much covering everything. But no, I don't know. I think we covered pretty much. I just have big hopes that more people will have the opportunity, and also the fathers. That's sort of the next step also. Yeah. And the little experience we've had has turned out wonderfully. So
So where can people actually find facilitators? Is there already a place where you can go? Because it's in Denmark.
Yeah.
It's in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Well, the Association for Pre and Perinatal Psychology and Health would have a listing, I believe, of
I think they're working on it,
facilitators.
maybe.
I see. Okay.
Ah, that's true. They're working on it.
They're working on listing the facilitators, so one
That's
could,
true.
if one could contact them, and one also there is the option that I know that some are experimenting with doing it virtually.
Yeah.
So if you are hampered by being very far away from a facilitator, you could reach out for joining a digital or virtual group. Yeah.
Yeah. So at birthpsychology.com, there should be a list of all the facilitators in the different countries.
Yeah.
By the time I think we
publish this.
This is published.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It was lovely talking to you.
Yeah. Likewise.